Good afternoon. I would like to call the meeting of Assembly Committee on Revenue to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assembly members Considine, De Silva, Flanagan, Gallant, Goulding, Gray, Hafen, Wynn, O'Neill, Roth, Chair Backus.
And I am present. Please mark Assemblymember De Silva present. And I believe you got Assemblymember Gallant present as well. She is here. With that, I thank everyone who has joined us this evening here in Carson City and those that may join us in Las Vegas, as well as those that are joining us over the internet. With that, on today's agenda, we have hearings for 3 bills in this committee. We have Assembly Bill 135, which revises provisions relating to certain tax exemptions for veterans and surviving spouses of veterans, as well as Assembly Bill 243, which establishes certain partial tax exemptions for surviving spouses of members of the armed forces of the United States who were killed in the line of duty, and Assembly Bill 313, which revises provisions relating to certain taxes assessed at the registration of a motor vehicle. And always we have public comment at the conclusion of our hearing. Just for kind of some parameters, we do have 3 bills on schedule this evening, and so that our wonderful members as well as our fabulous staff can get out at a reasonable time. We would just ask, hopefully, that presentations are limited to about 15 minutes or so. We'll always open it up to testimony in support as well as opposition and neutral, and we'll limit that. I know our rules allow for a 3-minute. We'll try to limit that to 2 minutes unless there's not that many people who are present. We obviously love to hear from everybody and offer as much as time as we can, but we're going to try to hopefully move things along. And so with that, I will go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 135. And I would ask our presenters to make their way to the table. And once you all get set up, please feel free to begin when you are ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus, Vice Chair Considine, and the distinguished members of our Committee on Revenue. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 135. For the record, my name is Toby Urek, that's T-O-B-Y-Y-U-R-E-K, and I have the privilege of representing Nevada's Assembly District 19. For those of you who served on this committee last session, you may actually recognize Assembly Bill 135, as it is the exact same bill that I brought then when it was known as AB 295. At that time, the committee did acknowledge the importance of ensuring that the spouses of our veterans, who quite honestly have served and sacrificed so much, to receive the tax exemptions that we hope and that you would agree they deserve. AB 295, just to make clear, did pass out of this committee unanimously. I'm grateful for that. But unfortunately, it did not quite make its way out of the Committee on Ways and Revenue. Or I'm sorry, Ways and Means. And so that is why I am bringing it forward again today, because this issue remains just important today as it was back then. So I'd like to clarify right now that veterans actually receive the tax exemptions that we're about to talk about when they are alive, and they do extend similar exemptions onto surviving spouses for disabled veterans. AB 135 seeks to extend these exemptions to surviving spouses of veterans whose service did not result in an actual disability. It does not create a new benefit. It simply ensures that all surviving spouses of veterans are treated equitably. The sacrifices made by surviving spouses are not defined by whether or not their loved one service resulted in a disability. Regardless of the circumstances of their spouse's service, these men and women moved their families across the country. They spent long times of periods of time separated from their loved ones, and they built their lives around the needs of our military. They endured uncertainty, hardship, and the unique challenges that come with supporting a spouse in uniform. And when their veteran passes away, they should not be left behind when it comes to the benefits that their family earned together. So this bill is about fairness. It recognizes that the sacrifices made by military families do not change based on whether or not their veteran service resulted in a disability. But by extending these exemptions, we're going to try to continue Nevada's proud tradition of supporting our military families just as they have supported us. And so with that, Chair, and with your permission, I'd like to turn it over to my friend and Veterans Council Commander Andy Lee Pilbett for just a few comments before I provide you with a quick and short presentation on the specifics of the bill before we turn it over to questions. Thank you, Chair.
Chair Backus and committee members, for the record, my name is Andrew Lee Pilbett. I am the state chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council, and I represent the 250,000 veterans in our state. And when you include their families, that's about 500,000 Nevadans from our veteran community. This bill is really essential. We have no idea the price that our spouses paid, and that's both men and women. We have deployed these people so many times, and our National Guard in our state has become an active component of our military, an active component. In my day, when I was in the service, you joined the Guard so you didn't have to serve overseas. But we have done this. We've had a lot of our military in the last 25 years that did something that is also extraordinary. We end up having them do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tours of duty, and we expect the spouses to keep it together while we're gone. Frequently, those tours are a year long, and many of special operations people, they're gone for 3 months or 6 months, and the spouses don't know when they're coming back. So the point being here that those spouses are serving right along with us and have suffered the strains of having to do everything while the one spouse is missing from the home. And for that reason, we absolutely support, and the 250,000 veterans in our state support this bill, and did last session as well. We have to recognize and protect those spouses. So when, especially once they lose that veteran spouse, which typically they go first, there's difficulties for them that are difficult to get over. This is a small step to help them as life goes on, and to recognize the price they paid while their veteran spouse is out and serving our country. So we encourage all of you to vote for this as you did last time. Thank you.
All right, Chair, I'm going to slide over this way a little bit if I can, because what I've done is I put together, and I'm going to bring it back from last session, one page or one PowerPoint slide to help make very simple this 20-page bill that you all have in front of you. And I'll be honest and tell you that you should also have, I think we've made copies of this slide together. It will help if you follow along on the presentation, because as I was going through this, it started to confuse me the first time. And so I'm a visual person, and I hope that the visual will help you as well. So here's what I want you to understand for purposes of this bill and the 20 pages before you that will make it simple. There are actually 3 types of property tax exemptions that would be referred to in this bill. One is under NRS 361-080. And by the way, this is not at all related to or dependent upon a surviving spouse being a veteran. This is for any surviving spouse in the state of Nevada that would otherwise qualify is going to be entitled to certain property tax exemptions. Then we have under NRS 361-090 our specific property tax exemptions that are available to non-disabled veterans. And then under 361-091, there are certain property tax exemptions that extend to disabled veterans. So here's just a little bit more clarification. First of all, I want you to note that these are all adjusted on a consumer price index, and an individual can designate an exemption to veterans' homes. All of these apply to these, to each one of these, where the asterisks are applied. So specifically is for any surviving spouse under 080, any spouse up to the first $1,000 of assessed value, they can get a property tax exemption. That's any spouse. If you are the spouse of a disabled veteran, that moves up to $2,000 $2,000. And then, of course, if you are a disabled veteran, we're going to allow for an additional or higher level amount that goes up based on your percentage of disability. So from 60 to 79, it's up to the first $10,000 of assessed valuation. 80 to 99 is $15,000, and if you are 100% disabled, up to the first $20,000 of assessed value, we would give you the opportunity to be exempt from the property taxes there. So then you get into qualifications, and it's not super significant, but what I want to assure you at this point is we're not changing or altering any of the underlying policies that went behind the decisions to allow for these property tax exemptions. Under 080, you have to be a resident, you can't be remarried, right? For the disabled veterans, it talks about things like you have to be a resident, you have to have served at least 90 days in times of war, you have to have served in active duty and carrying out authorization granted to a president, or served in active duty campaign where a medal has been authorized. And by the way, all of the veterans ones would exclude this from anybody that was dishonorably discharged. And then if you look over under the disabled veteran under 091, there's those designations there. Now here's the important part where we start to hone in on AB 135. First of all, limitations, let me just make clear as well. You cannot collect both the exemptions that are available under 091 and 090 at the same time. And that's going to be for some of the obvious reasons. But now here's where we get into 195. Oh, I'm sorry, 135. Surviving spouses of disabled veterans, the benefits that are available under 091 can be passed on, and a surviving spouse can claim those same exemptions if they are married to and living with a vet for 5 years prior to the death. The veteran was or would have been eligible to receive those benefits, and they are not remarried and they are still a resident of the state of Nevada. If the surviving spouse meets that criteria, again, all existing law, the benefits for disabled veterans, property tax exemptions would pass on to them. This is now where we get into AB 135. What we are merely looking to do is take the same limited tax exemptions that would apply to a non-disabled veteran, again, up to the first $2,000 of assessed value, and allow that to be applied to a surviving spouse of a non-disabled veteran. And so that's what it is. And again, the limitations are there. You can't claim both for the 090 and the 080. You can't be a surviving spouse and a surviving spouse of a non-disabled veteran and get like the 3,000. It's limited to the two. All right. So that is Section 1 does that. And then Section 2 clarifies that the claim, or that you can claim as a surviving spouse under 091 and as a qualifying veteran under 090. So if both you and your spouse were serving, you're collecting the one benefit, and your surviving spouse or the surviving spouse had the non-disabled veteran pass away, they could claim both of those as well. So that's clarified in Section 2 of the bill. And then here's where it gets confusing, but I'm going to try to keep it very simple, is not all of our veterans own property where they could claim this tax exemption, right? They don't own a property where they could have assessed value and take advantage of this property tax exemption. So what this Section 3 and 4 does is it allows, again, the same thing that is currently occurring, not a policy change, but just making sure that this applies to this as well. And that is that for individuals without property, where property tax exemptions could apply, that real property, that it can be applied to vehicle assessed value. And they can claim that. Most of our veterans and surviving spouses would have vehicles that they could do that. And that is, again, current policy. We're just clarifying under Section 3 and 4 that the same provisions of non-disabled veterans, surviving spouses could apply the same thing to their vehicles. So if that wasn't as clear as mud, I hoped to try to make it clearer for you. Certainly, Chair, now we would be open to entertain any questions the committee might have.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Assemblymember Gray.
Hello there, Assemblyman Urich. I was fully on board until you introduced Mr. LaPilbit. No, great man. My question is, do you promise to keep bringing this bill back until it does pass both houses and get signed into law?
Thank you for the question, Toby Urich, for the record. Chair, through you to the Assembly member. I will tell you that I am hoping this is the last time I have to come before this committee to present this bill, that we can get it through Ways and Means, but certainly this is something that I am committed to bringing back until we have the funds in the state to promote this policy that I'm hoping again passes with this committee's blessing.
Thank you, Assemblyman Yurick. And I do believe the Assembly Veterans Caucus is firmly behind this bill as well.
Thank you. With that, members, do we have any other questions from any other members? I'll go to Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you. I was here last session. Nice to see you. Nice to see you again. I have a question and then a follow-up. On the vehicles, you said vehicles. So that makes me wonder, so can somebody use, can a veteran or a surviving spouse use the exemption for more than one house? Or can they only, or a veteran use it for multiple vehicles? Like, is there any restrictions for this, or does it have to be their domicile house? Can it be a house? You know where I'm asking.
And that was a question I did not anticipate. Toby Yerk, for the record, Chair, through you to the Assembly member. I am hoping that we might be able to get some clarification from LCB on that. But as I understand, it's obviously limited to the assessed value. And I do believe it has to be only one primary residence. But I'm speaking a little out of turn, and I'd love to get some backup from LCB if they're available.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I can probably answer that one as well.
I will go ahead and let me turn it over to Mr. Nakamoto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was kind of hoping you would turn it over to Assemblymember Gray. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division, for the record. I honestly don't know the answer to this, and so this is something I will have to look into and get back to you on. So again, if Assemblymember Gray can bail staff out, then I am all ears. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, I'll get Assemblymember Gray's comment, but we can always follow up with our legal staff. They're just obviously really busy at this time of the year with a couple of upcoming deadlines. So, Assemblymember Gray, you can just comment on the inquiry, probably personal experience.
Yes, they're very flexible on it. Usually, if you're using it on a vehicle, you're not going to exceed your threshold, and you can use it on multiple vehicles, and you can also split it between your vehicles and whatever's left and put it on the real property as well. Don't quote me on this one, but I believe it's only your primary residence you can use it on.
Next, we will go to Assemblymember. Did you have a follow-up question? Yeah. We'll go back to Vice Chair Considine.
Okay, I have another question. Do you know the average number of surviving spouses of qualifying veterans who may be eligible for a partial exemption under this measure?
Thank you for the question. Toby Yerk, for the record, Chair, through you to the Assembly member. This is a question that did come up before, and I'm going to tell you, I didn't have exact numbers, but the question was, I think, even deeper related to what is the amount that this could even hit, like based on those anticipated numbers. And I did ask Fiscal to provide me with an update, and I'll tell you the update was as confusing when I received it this year as it was back then. And so I don't know if Mr. Nakamoto might be able to address that question as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Nakamoto, for the record. This one I can answer. Assemblymember Yurick had a better memory than I did, because I know this question was asked 2 years ago, but what we basically did is there was the question on how many eligible veterans or surviving spouses are claiming this. And so what we looked at is the tax expenditure report that is put out by the Department of Taxation. And so for the current veterans exemption in NRS 361.090, and this is the one that is proposed to be amended to expand it to surviving spouses, in FY 2023, 14,692 veterans were estimated to have received the exemption, and the total amount of property tax that was exempted was just over $1.7 million. And then in FY 2024, there were 13,888 veterans who were estimated to have received the exemption, and then the estimated total amount of tax that was exempted was just over $2 million. For the governmental services tax, the tax expenditure report is a little less precise, because the report combines the information between the current exemption for veterans and the current exemption for disabled veterans and their surviving spouses. But there are far more veterans who are taking the GST exemptions when you combine them. It is 77,784 persons received one of those two exemptions, and it was a total estimated exemption amount of just over $14 million, and that was in FY23. And then in FY24, it was approximately 75,129 persons received one of the exemptions, and the estimated exempted amount was about $14.1 million. So to the extent that you would be increasing that, that doesn't necessarily answer the question that was asked, in that how many would potentially be eligible under this, but it does it gives some information about what the current scope of the existing exemptions are. And I hope that is sufficient information for the question.
Thank you. And it does seem like, obviously, there may be some surviving spouses out there that the veteran's no longer taking the exemption that could come back on, but this could also be indicative of what like the future would hold if they were the surviving spouse. I am going to go to Assemblymember O'Neill, and then I have a couple questions too.
I remember the bill. I remember the conversation. It is just your one house or your prime residency. I remember that discussion, but I don't remember the bill number. Could you, A, repeat the bill number, and B, if it went to Ways and Means last year, we must have had a physical note on it, and I went and looked. There are no physical notes on this at all. How were you able to, if it's the same bill, how were you able to get the mines changed, or was that Andy's work?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Toby Yerrick, for the record. Chair, through you to the Assemblymember. The bill last session in the 82nd legislative session was AB 295. And as indicated, it did not, it died in Ways without a hearing. So I never went there. I never got a formal fiscal note that I recall that I had to prepare for address. In conversations with the respected chair of that committee, there's, as would be considered, right, a number of these types of bills that choices have to be made, right? And so as I understood it, it wasn't obviously a policy consideration or anything. It's just, I don't know if it's because it's the first time this one was brought. I'm new enough around here. I don't know what I don't know on how some of those decisions are made. But certainly my hope is that as we hone in on this and start to get numbers, assuming it makes it out of this committee and gets to Ways, that we'll be able to gather that information and address those concerns at that time.
I hope it stays that way too, and we keep it out of Ways this session. So thank you. I like the bill. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember. I kind of like, because I wear both hats, I obviously get the pleasure to serve on revenue. I also get the pleasure to serve on our Ways and Means. And the hard part is when we have bills that create negative revenue, that creates an expense that our appropriations committees have to consider when we're finalizing our budget to make sure we leave here with a balanced budget. I wish we could make money grow on trees because there's so many good things that we could spend it on. But I had a quick question, and either you feel free to answer this, and I don't know if we asked it last session, but if a household includes two veterans, are they able, is each veteran then able to take advantage of, if where applicable, .090 and .091 for the disabled veteran and the not? Can a household of two veterans take advantage of both of those provisions?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Toby Yerrick, for the record. I do believe that the exemptions that are available to two individuals each would be able to claim that exemption on their own merit as a veteran, a non-disabled veteran, a disabled veteran, or under the circumstances I described in my presentation as a surviving spouse as well, where appropriate. And if I am incorrect, LCB, please step up and tell me so.
So I guess where I was getting at is, because I was going to head right where you were going, but I was looking at it as a household of two veterans. I was just curious because looking at like obviously what's going to eventually have to happen is looking at like what the negative revenue impact could be by extending the household where we have surviving spouses. I mean, it may be unknown because we have the situation where we already have a veteran who's already deceased, because it sounds to me, and maybe I'm incorrect and could be corrected, that if we have a surviving spouse who's kind of fallen off of the exemption because their spouse had died some time ago, if they meet each of the requirements under the bill, they could obviously submit a request for exemption, even though they haven't been able to take that exemption in the recent years since their surviving spouse. I mean, since their veteran spouse had passed on.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And again, I'm going to tell you there's some of these technicalities that I'm not fully aware of because, again, I'm not changing anything of the underlying principles that lead into this. But those are some great questions, and I am happy to look into that and provide answers for the chair if that's something you would be interested in.
And then circling back, and I don't know if you're going to have this answer either, just because I don't know if the data is out there, is just trying to find out what the average number of individuals who may qualify both as a veteran and as a surviving spouse of a veteran with a permanent service-connected disability, and who may be eligible for a partial tax exemption under the measure. And I don't know if that was also something that if fiscal had pulled, I'm getting a head shake down. I was curious if fiscal had already pulled to see if there was a situation where you have an overlap of 0.090 and 0.091. And it's okay. I mean, if you're unable to get it, I know we have legal staff that may be able to say, yeah, these can be taken by a two-veteran household. That may be responded to. And we may just not have this data. I know our committee gets the privilege to look at a lot of tax policy and exemptions, and sometimes we just don't know what the impact's going to be until it happens. But I thank you for your presentation. I want to see, do we have any other members that want to ask questions? I don't think so. Well, with that, once again, thank you. Obviously, thank you. I forgot to thank you for your service to our country. It's always a pleasure to have you before us this session. With that, we'll go ahead and open up testimony in support of Assembly Bill 135 in Carson City. Please make your way down to the front and state your name for the record. And you can probably have a little more than 2 minutes if yours.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus, Vice Chair Considine, members of the committee. My name is Wesley Harper. I am the Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas. We stand in support of this bill. The City of North Las Vegas has demonstrated its commitment to supporting all veterans. 17,642 veterans live in North Las Vegas, and we are home to the only jurisdictional veteran-focused center in Southern Nevada. The Veteran Community and Resource Center provides comprehensive support for veterans and their families, and I'm happy to share details about the center at the committee's request. Again, we support this bill. Thank you very much for allowing our testimony.
We'll go ahead to Las Vegas. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. So AVH, is there one on the phone line this evening wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 135?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 135, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Was this 243 we were talking about?
We're talking about 135.
Okay, sorry. Barry Johnston, Las Vegas. Property taxes theft, plain and simple. Imagine sacrificing for your country, risking your life and limb to defend liberty abroad, only to come home and told your property, your hard-earned rightful land isn't truly yours, but merely leased from the government. This is un-American and unjust. Why should any citizen, let alone a veteran or a senior, or their surviving spouse, pay a perpetual ransom to the government to keep their own home and to keep someone with a gun to come and kick you out of your home? The very idea contradicts principles upon which this nation was founded. Our founding fathers never intended for the government to be landlords, taxing citizens out of their property. Yet today we face perpetual taxation, turning property owners into tenants and the government into perpetual landlords. Property taxes are theft. They enable the government growth, wasteful spending, and feed bloated bureaucracy that infringes upon our freedoms. We are California, and you guys are spending just like they are. You keep implementing programs that just keep stealing from these very people. This system punishes those who have not have served bravely and burdened grieving spouses who deserve our utmost respect and gratitude, not tax bills. It's horrifying that we must stand here and defend the principles of property ownership against a system of taxation that threatens homes as that are never truly ours. I urge you to end this legalized robbery, to honor our sacrifices of our veterans and their families, and abolish property taxes entirely. This allows citizens to truly own their property and uphold the American promise of life, liberty, and prosperity without government encroachment. Nevada was a no-tax state, and you guys have turned it into a nanny state stealing from us.
Sir, two things really quickly. One, can I have you state your name slowly for the record and spell it? And two, it sounds like you are not in support of the bill as written. Is that my understanding?
Well, I support the bill. I mean, we got to do something because you guys are just stealing from these people. But it needs to just completely remove property tax from everyone. Nevada's a no-tax state. You guys are just robbing us.
Can you state your
Barry
name?
Johnston, Berry Johnston.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. Next caller.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 135, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good evening. This is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN. I'm a 50-year member of the American Legion Auxiliary, 10 times past president, and I'm in favor of this bill. After all, our veterans and their families have sacrificed so much for all the rest of us. We seem to have lots and lots of money for so many other people and issues. So don't our veterans and their families deserve to have some type of perks, if you will, like their home for all that they have sacrificed for us? Of course they do. So please do keep bringing this issue back until we get it passed. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I'm Connie McMullen, representing the Senior Coalition of Washoe County, spelled MCMULLEN. We are in support of AB 135, supporting our state's veterans. Thank you, and we hope you vote for this bill.
Ma'am, before you get off the phone line, can you state your name slowly and spell the first name for the record? We got McCullen.
I believe that caller has dropped from the line.
Thank you so much, AVH. We can go to the next caller then.
There are no other callers wishing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. With that, we will go ahead and take testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 135. We'll start here in Carson City. I don't see anyone making their way up to the front. There doesn't appear to be anyone in Las Vegas, so we will go to the phone lines. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 135?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 135, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in opposition at this time.
Perfect. We will come to Carson City and welcome up anyone wishing to give testimony in neutral to Assembly Bill
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Vincent Guthreau. The last name is spelled Guthreau. My first name is Vincent, Vinson. I represent NACO. I'm the executive director of the Nevada Association of Counties, which our board is all 17 of Nevada's counties. We don't have a position on a particular bill, but just a consideration for the committee and some additional information about and a policy consideration around sort of across the board abatements and exemptions on taxes. While we think, we could look at sort of hardship cases or ability to pay, whether that's someone may, have medical debt or some other medical condition that provides an ability to pay, or just people on a fixed income could have some inability to pay. We just encourage this committee to look. I know there's 3 bills up today that do across the board exemptions, just to look at those in totality. So I just put that on the record from NACO. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Still don't have anyone in Las Vegas, so we'll go to the phone lines. ABH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 135?
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 135, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And before we have closing statement by Assemblymember Urick, we got some information about my question, the legal question about the application of sections 90 and 91 with respect to a 2-veteran household. And that wasn't it. I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Nakamoto about which of my questions I asked that we did get a response for. So we can just put that on here now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division. It was actually a different question about whether this could be claimed in more than one county. And so I phoned a friend, and basically what I found out is it's actually subsection 4 of NRS 361.090 that says when the veteran makes the application with their county assessor for the exemption, whether it's for the property tax or the governmental services tax, they do have to sign an affidavit saying that they are not claiming the exemption in any other county. So they basically, the veteran who is eligible for the exemption will declare, they'll fill out an affidavit with their county assessor saying that I am claiming the exemption and splitting it out because they are allowed to allocate it between their real or personal property as well as their motor vehicle for the governmental services tax. But they make that declaration, but they can only make it in one county. So if somebody has multiple properties in multiple counties, they would only be able to claim it once in one county. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And with that, Assemblymember Urick, feel free to provide your closing.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Toby Urick. Thank you, Mr. Nakamoto, for following up, because my commitment to you as I came back up here for a follow-up and to close, Chair, is that I will make sure that I go back and get all of your questions to the extent that I am able to try to get you and this committee some answers so that you can make an informed decision. I will do the legwork, do everything I can to the extent that that information is available. And in closing, I just want to say, listen, I am so proud. One of the reasons I am proud to live in Nevada is because this is a state that truly believes in and supports its veterans. And I believe that in considering this bill and passing this on to the surviving spouses, we're going to continue that tradition. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you and encourage you for your support.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 135. I will go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 243, and I will welcome up Assembly Member Hibbets. I don't know. He is. Maybe we can switch these around to make it easy. We will go ahead. I see Mr. Nakamoto, and I know he's helping out on Assembly Bill 313, right? So we'll go ahead and, what we'll do is we're going to take, because we have Assembly Member Koenig, we'll go ahead and take out of order Assembly Bill 313. We'll allow Assembly Member Hibbett's time to finish up in ledge ops. And so with that, I'll go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 313 and welcome Assembly Member Koenig up to the dais. And I believe you have a friend that is also going to help you today. So everyone welcome, and when you are ready, please feel free to begin.
Thank you, Chair, and the Committee on Revenue for considering AB 313 today. My name is Greg Koenig, Gregkoenig, and I represent Assembly District 38. So I've asked his permission, so I'm not violating HIPAA, but with me today I have Mike Heidemann, and I'll let him spell his name when he gets to that. But he's a patient of mine, and when I get my patients back in a little dark room, checking their eyes, I'm a captured audience, and I talk sometimes more politics than I do eyes when I'm back in there. But Mr. Heidemann said, is there anything that we can do to help the volunteer firefighters in Nevada? And I thought, that sounds like a good idea. And so I put it on my tickler list, and I'm always looking for things that'll help my rural constituents. And this will affect the bigger counties also, but it will affect more the rural counties. And so I did some research on what a lot of other states are doing, and a lot of them had to do with breaks in income tax and property tax and all kinds of things. And what I came up with, because I wanted to keep it basically as simple as possible, is we want to offer a $350 break on vehicle registrations for volunteer firefighters in the state. I'm going to turn the time over to Mike to give some background and tell why this is needed, and then when he's done, with the help of Mr. Nakamoto, we will go over the bill there. So we'll turn the time over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Heidemann, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, H-E-I-D-E-M-A-N-N. I serve as Executive Director for the Nevada State Firefighters Association. And as Assemblyman Koenig had mentioned, we need to do something in our state to help with the recruitment and retention of volunteer firefighters. In the last 5 years, we've probably dropped somewhere in the neighborhood of 35%, particularly in the rural areas. I wear another hat as Nevada rep to the National Volunteer Fire Council. This is not just a Nevada problem. There are other states that have instituted programs, as the Assemblyman said, but we were looking for something that we could reward our volunteers that are not only protecting their communities, but the interstates and highways and county roads that, not only our residents use, but 40 to 45 million visitors. It's becoming critical in our state, particularly in the rural areas, where responses are not being answered. In particular, a lot of the areas also run ambulance. So they're critical to the safety of those that are traveling. I can tell you that in speaking with the Clark County Rural Coordinator, they were a robust 300 members 5 years ago. They're down to 110. I spoke to the fire chief in Lovelock yesterday. They're down from 30 members to 15. Sometimes the calls aren't answered. So we don't really have a lot in our state to offer them for recognition, support, and thanking them for what they do at no cost. And this would be a great way to help with their recruitment and retention without the ability of these small communities to offer employment to a paid fire department and can still rely on their volunteers. So I'd be happy to answer any questions in respect of your time, and thank you for your consideration.
Greg Koenig for the record. I do have a couple of conceptual amendments. Amendment number 1 is a volunteer firefighter may claim the exemption from the government services tax, which is included in the fees to register a vehicle for only one vehicle. And the second amendment is a volunteer firefighter must have not less than 6 months' experience as a volunteer firefighter in order to claim the exemption from the governmental service tax, which is included in the fees to register a vehicle. So I'd say it's really pretty simple, but that's kind of a death knell right there. Actually, we're going through this bill. When I first got this bill, I was like, this isn't my bill. It doesn't mention the number of $350 a single time in the whole bill. So I was like, this isn't even my bill. So I went down to LCB and they explained it to me that it was my bill and kind of told me how it worked. And I got back to my office and I'm like, I still don't know why it doesn't say 350 a single time. So I had Michael Nakamoto was nice enough to come up to my office, and when it comes to questions, if you guys want to know how that actually works, he came up, and the handout for the explanation is 7 pages long, and my bill is 3 pages long. But I mostly understood it when he left. Could I tell you? No. But I said, oh yeah, I think that makes sense enough that I'm going to believe you. So when it comes to questions, if any of you want to know the specifics on how we get to that $350, then I will phone a friend and we will ask for some help. So the bill basically just gives you $350 every time when you register your vehicle. You have to have either an identification card, which indicates that you serve as a volunteer firefighter, or a letter from the chief officer of a volunteer combination fire department. And then by adding in have to have served for 6 months, we want to make sure that you don't sign up, register your vehicle, get $350 off, and then quit. So that was a suggestion that we took. And then there was some concerns that if a volunteer firefighter owned 5 vehicles, they would try to get, the exemption 5 times, and we're going to limit that to 1. So at this point, Chair, if it's okay with you, we would open it up for questions.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and start with questions. We have a question from Assemblymember Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair. And Assemblymember Koenig, I can relate to you on that point because I have several bills that the digest is longer than the actual bill. So I can relate with you on the things that we learn as we go about in this job. So, there. My question is very simple. How many folks would qualify for this? I know that the professional firefighter, there's that, and then there's the volunteer. So how many approximately volunteer firefighter we have in Nevada?
Greg Koenig, for the record, I'm going to throw out numbers, my understanding, and I might need to be corrected on that, but there's a little over 100 volunteer firefighters in Clark County, and there's about 650 for the whole state, so 550 for the rest of the state. So the percentage of volunteer firefighters in Clark County is a lot smaller than what's the rest of the state. So I would say 650, and that's going to be give and take a handful.
Quick follow-up, Chair. And in terms of similar benefits that may be offered to volunteer firefighter across our different part of our countries, is this something that is new, or this is kind of keep up with similar practices across different states that give this benefit to volunteer firefighters, or any other benefits that were not even brought up in this conversation?
Greg Koenig, for the record. I actually didn't do the research myself. I had LCB do that, but they gave me a list of 15 or 20 of the surrounding ones, and the majority of them do something to help their volunteer firefighters.
But just to clarify, vehicles wasn't one of them, or vehicle is one of them?
It was one of them. It wasn't the majority of them. The majority of them, Greg Koenig, for the record, most of them, like I said, had to do with breaks on their taxes, mostly an income tax, which isn't at this point something that we can offer. And I wanted to do something that was, as easy as possible to implement. And I think a lot of them offered a lot more than $350. And I wanted something that I felt that potentially we can afford, but actually means a little bit to them. And I chose the route that I thought would be, easier to implement than break in their taxes kind of thing.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. I hope we can never offer them a reduction on their state income tax, by the way. But that was not my comment or question. Would this be just for one car, or for as many cars as the volunteer firefighter owns?
Greg Koenig, for the record. The conceptual amendment number 1 says fees to register a a vehicle for only one vehicle.
Okay.
So it didn't say that in the original bill, but the conceptual amendment limits it to one individual vehicle.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for the humor in the beginning of your presentation. That was awesome.
We'll go to Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I just want to clarify this, because I don't see 350 in the amendment. And then I'm confused with, is the determined valuation for the vehicle can exceed 8750? Where did that come from?
Greg Koenig for the record, and you just opened the can of worms. So I am going to turn the time over to Michael to explain how that happens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record, and as the normal disclosure, I am here at the bequest or the request of Assemblymember Koenig to answer questions about the bill. I am not here to support or oppose it, but rather put together the table that was referenced, which is actually 14 pages and not 7. However, you know, if there is no better way to explain anything than to overkill it, then we might as well. However, to answer your question, Assemblymember Considine, it does actually require this level of detail to go through. And so basically on page 1, and this is the table that I put together, these series of tables go through and walk through the calculation of the governmental services tax for a sample vehicle, both with and without the exemption. So perhaps the easiest way to do it is just to walk through. On example 1, it's a brand new vehicle with a $30,000 MSRP on page 1, which is table 1A. And so you start with that MSRP, and NRS 371.050 says that the MSRP is, the value, you start with the value of the vehicle, which is the MSRP of the vehicle, brand new in the state, when it's first offered in the state without any options or extras. So for this example, it is $30,000. And then NRS 371.050 further says you take 35% of that value to come up with what is known as the determined value of the vehicle. So in this case, $30,000 times the 35% is $10,500. And then NRS 371.060 requires a depreciation factor to be set on the vehicle for the purposes of taxing the vehicle based on the age of the vehicle. So a brand new vehicle is taxed at 100%. There's no depreciation, but a 1-year-old vehicle is at 95%. So you would multiply that by 95% all the way down to a vehicle that is 9 years old or older, which is the depreciation factor is 15%. And so that's why there are a bunch of different examples on these tables, because it's walking through all of those calculations based on the age of the vehicle. And so in that instance, or in the instance of this first example, it's 100%, it's a brand new vehicle. So the determined value after depreciation is the same $10,500, and that's what the tax rate is going to apply to. So in NRS 371.040, the tax rate for the basic GST, the state rate is 4%. And so then when you take the $10,500 times 4%, you come up with the tax due, which is $420. So if you go to the right-hand column with the exemption, you walk through the same steps. So it's the $30,000 car multiplied by 35%. You come up with that same $10,500. There's no depreciation, so you multiply it by 100%, and then the $10,500 is the determined value after the depreciation. And then this is where that exemption, that $8,750 comes in. So it happens to be that when I was approached with the question on how is this drafted, what number should be put in, the legal division had asked me, I said $8,750. And so they were probably looking at me the same way that Assemblymember Koenig was looking at the legal division. How did you come up with that? And basically, and so once you subtract the $8,750 from that $10,500, you come up with $1,750, which is the value after the exemption action is taken, you multiply that by 4%, and the tax due is $70, which is exactly $350 less than the exempted amount. And so it just happens to be that $8,750 times 4% is $350. That's the simple way to do it. So the reason why all of these examples were put together is because as you get the older the vehicle gets, because of the depreciation, the less the tax becomes. And there is actually a point, and in this instance for Table 1A, it happens in Example 3, where there's a 2-year-old vehicle where the benefit actually goes slightly less than $350 for the simple reason that subsection 3 of NRS 371.060 says that the minimum amount of tax that is due is $16. So in no instance is anybody going to pay less than $16 even with this exemption, but the net benefit could grow less than that, but that was the reason why multiple iterations of this were put together. And so there are also examples in here. Table 1B goes through the same example with a vehicle with a $75,000 MSRP at the 4% rate. And then tables 2A and 2B go through the same example of the $30,000 and the $75,000 vehicle at the 5% rate. There are 2 counties in Nevada, Churchill and Clark County, that have a supplemental GST rate of 1%, making the total GST rate 5%, and it walks through the calculations there. So that is hopefully the simplest way that I can explain how $8,750 turns into $350, but if not, I would be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Members, do we have any follow-up questions for the presenters or our fiscal staff regarding the value? Okay, it looks like we don't. So we thank the presenters for their presentation this evening, and we will go ahead and open the hearing to take testimony in support of Assembly Bill 313 here in Carson City.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Ryan Beeman, representing the professional firefighters of Nevada. First, I'd like to say thank you to the Assembly Member Koenig for sponsoring this piece of legislation, and to the Chair and the committee for hearing the bill. I'm here before you to advocate for an important cause that impacts those who selflessly serve our communities, the volunteer firefighters. Just want to be clear on the record, we as the professional firefighters are not here to try to be included in the bill. As I work for one of the largest fire departments in the state of Nevada that serves our suburban area, we respond with our 10 rural departments down in Clark County. As it was mentioned earlier, we're seeing the numbers drop in our volunteers throughout Clark County. We're down to around 100, 110. When they can't respond, it does pull all the resources from Clark County to help those out there in the rural areas. They offer a valuable service responding to fires and accidents and other emergencies, yet despite their critical role, they often do it without financial compensation, shouldering a lot of the cost themselves. One significant expense for these volunteers is their vehicle. Many of them use their own cars to rush to those emergencies, attend the trainings, and participate in community safety events. Those costs associated with maintaining the fueling those vehicles can also be burdensome to those volunteers. And creating this exemption from this tax for their registered vehicle would definitely help with a little bit of the financial relief, but also shows a good gesture and gratitude and recognition for these individuals. We encourage you to support AB with 313.
Thank you so much. With that, I see no one in Las Vegas, so AVH, we will go to the phone lines. Is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 313 this evening?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 313, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 051. You are unmuted and may begin.
Barry Johnston, BERRYJOHNSTON, Las Vegas. Let's call this what it is. You're forcing Nevadans to pay rent to the state on their own vehicle. This is so-called government services tax is nothing more than legalized theft, a system designed to extract more and more from hardworking people while you grow your bloated bureaucracy. The truth is the government produces nothing. It creates no wealth, no value. It only takes. The state is a parasite that feeds off the people, expanding endlessly, consuming everything in its path. You are completely out of control. And now Watts thinks the answer is to pushing people towards predatory loans to pay for these absurd fees. This isn't governance, that's extortion. People with guns will show up and seize our property, hunt us down, and ruin our lives if we don't pay your tax. This is not voluntary. This is not a democracy. This is coercion under the threat of force. A truly free society does not function this way. Government should exist only to protect our rights, not to bleed us dry under the threat of armed enforcers. Enough is enough. No more making Nevadans pay rent to keep their own property. If DMV needs funding, charge only what it costs to process the registration, nothing more. We must abolish these parasitic taxes and move to a consumption-based system where people pay for what they use, not just existing. The state is to serve the people, not the other way around. You have no right to take from us because you've grown addicted to spending. This is theft, and it must end now. We need a government so small it doesn't matter which parasites are elected. This body is turned into graft enforcers who steal from us, which was a no-tax state. And Danielle, you think you really need to start fighting for us on these taxes and not letting these bills not make it. If you have to start getting crazy, get crazy. You're supposed to stand up for us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next caller.
Chair, there are no other callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we will go ahead and next move to opposition to Assembly Bill 313. We'll start here in Carson City. I don't see anyone coming down here to give testimony in opposition. There's no one in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone on the telephone lines wishing to give testimony in the opposition to Assembly Bill 313?
The public line is open and working. There are no other callers at this time.
Great. With that, we will finally move to testimony in the neutral. Is there anyone wishing to give testimony in the neutral? We will welcome Mr. Sievers and others, and feel free to begin when you would like.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Sean Sever from the Nevada DMV. We are neutral on AB 313. We did submit a fiscal note that is on Nellis, and we do appreciate the bill sponsor reaching out to us. I realize this isn't a money committee, but just briefly, our fiscal note highlights a projected loss to the governmental services tax collections based on the 8750 language listed in the bill. We recently spoke with a bill sponsor who provided some clarification on his intent with the legislation, and we would be happy to work with the sponsor on an amendment that could potentially reduce the estimated impact of the exemption. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Joe Harrington, Communications Director for NDOT. For the record, we just wanted to put on the record that NDOT does receive a portion of the GST. It might be difficult to quantify the impact of AB 1313 but this money does go into the State Highway Trust Fund for NDOT operations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We still don't have anyone in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 313?
The line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we will go ahead and welcome our bill sponsor back up for any closing remarks.
Greg Koenig for the record. I'm glad that guy on the phone was in favor of my bill. And I want to thank the DMV for working with me. When they first gave me a fiscal note on there, it was $9 million And so luckily we were able to, they couldn't figure out Michael's formula either. But by the time we got done with it, it was about $180,000. So I think that's a number that our volunteer firefighters deserve. I think this bill, two things. I think it helps just let them know that we respect them, and it helps a little bit in their pocketbooks. I mean, not a lot, but it's just a token. But I think if it can help us increase our number of volunteer firefighters or keep the ones that we have. We heard from Lovelock had 30 5 years ago, and they have 15 now. And I think they're also running their ambulance service. So for the safety and for the protection of not just the rurals, but like we heard also in Clark County, if we can get some more volunteer firefighters anyway, I think that's for the best of the state. Thank you.
And before you leave, I just kind of was, when I calculated, just assuming, and we're probably not fully staffed with volunteer firefighters. I know you had about 180. I mean, we don't know what the value of each of the vehicles are, but I was thinking if you have 650 volunteer firefighters for the whole state, and if they were able to take the benefit of a maximum of the 350, that was 227,500. But I think the unknown quantity would be if we were fully staffed, as well as each vehicle is going to have a different value. But I look forward to you working with DMV, because at $9 million, it seems a little high. So, and I think Mr. Severs recognizes that. So thank you.
And then Greg Koenig, again, real quick. The number that you said is if every single vehicle owned by a volunteer firefighter is worth $10,000 or more. So if some of them are less, then they won't get the full 350 benefit. They will get less than that. And then typically the percentage of members who take advantage of this is never 100%. It's significantly lower than that. So I think maybe that's where they came up with it. But we're in the ballpark.
Yeah, we don't also want to hurt Mr. Nakamoto's ears. It would be, because the determined valuation of $87.50 is a portion of the MSRP. But yeah, it was looking at, obviously, it would be much higher value. But thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation this evening. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 313. And we will go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 243. And I'd like to apologize to Assemblymember Hibbets. I think I misled him and told him he was last on our list today. And so thank you for hurrying over here. I know you have another hearing at this time as well. So whenever you're ready, please feel free to begin.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Brian Hibbets, representing Assembly District 13 in Clark County. I'm presenting Assembly Bill 243, which establishes certain partial tax exemptions for surviving spouses of members of the armed forces of the United States who were killed in the line of duty. In background, we know that our service members sacrifice tremendously for us. They give their time and energy, shouldering significant physical and emotional burdens to help maintain our safety and security. It is important to remember, though, that just as our service members sacrifice, their families do too. They miss time with their loved ones, often through milestone moments such as birthdays, trips, and even medical events. They may be asked to uproot their lives, give up or forego employment, and take on the bulk of home or family responsibilities. We know, though it is painful to even contemplate, sometimes our service members and their families make the ultimate sacrifice. Recognizing the weight of all these sacrifices is incredibly important, but it is critical that we specifically acknowledge and consider what we can do to support the family members whose spouses have been killed in the line of duty, and that is what I seek to do with AB 243. Excuse me. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to walk through the sections of the bill. Sections 1 and 4, respectively, increase the partial exemption from property taxes and governmental services taxes for the surviving spouse of a member of the armed forces of the United States who was killed in action. Specifically, they increase the exemption from $1,000 to the amount of the exemption for the surviving spouse of a veteran with a permanent service-connected disability of 100%. These sections also outline the criteria that a surviving spouse must meet, such as being a bona fide resident of the state and not remarrying in order to be eligible, as well as steps the county assessor must take to verify the exemption. Additionally, these sections provide a definition for member of the Armed Forces of the United States who is killed in the line of duty, and they outline penalties for a person who is allowed such an exemption using a false affidavit or proof. Furthermore, Sections 2 and 5 make a conforming change to authorize a qualifying surviving spouse to request the deposit of an amount equal to the partial exemption to the gift account of the veteran's home in Southern Nevada or the gift account for the veteran's home in Northern Nevada. Now, how did we get here? I received emails during the interim from different veterans, completely unconnected. And both of these people, both to me and then also former State Senator Hammond, who then forwarded them to myself because I was the only one from our area left. And both of the gentlemen said, hey, we've been looking at Nevada, and Arizona and Colorado both offer reductions in property tax rates based on service disability, based on VA disability ratings. We'd like to see something like that in Nevada. I thought, well, we've got a whole lot of veterans in this state. Why don't we see if we can do something for them? So I had LCB look into it. Excuse me. I'm sorry, the dry air today. And so I had LCB look into it, and as you saw in the first presentation today, the state of Nevada actually does offer reductions in property taxes for service-disabled veterans. And I appreciate my colleague's graphic for during his presentation because I wasn't forward-thinking enough to do that. But LCB said that they mentioned that Colorado was mentioned, and one thing that Colorado does that our state does not do is extend these benefits to the surviving member or surviving spouse of a troop killed in action. But well, that seems like a good idea. Let's do that instead. So that's how we got where we are today. So in closing, I urge your support of this important legislation. Our service members do sacrifice sometimes everything for us, and we have a responsibility to do everything we can to support their loved ones in times of such immense tragedy. Thank you for your consideration, and I will now stand for questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Assemblymember Hibbets, we will go ahead with questions. I'll start with Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, I know we just heard earlier about another exemption. So would a person who qualified for this exemption also be eligible for the surviving spouse exemptions granted under NRS 361.090 or 371.1017 or 101?
Thank you for your question. Brian Hibbets, for the record. So and I actually had LCB do a little research into that prior to today, and the quote that I got says, AB 243 tax exemption does not affect the eligibility of that person for an exemption under NRS 361.090 or 091 based on the person's own service in the armed forces. That was not something that I intended, and honestly, I didn't think about it until I saw this. So that's something that I do plan to address, because I think that the maximum amount that they would be getting as the surviving member would be better than anything they could get as a member themselves.
By chance, and I'm not sure if you have this information, do you know the number of surviving spouses of U.S. Armed Forces members killed in the line of duty who may be eligible for a partial tax exemption under this measure?
Brian Hibbets, for the record, I do not. However, my colleague from Carson City is indicating to me that he would like to be phoned in as a friend, if it's all right with you, Chair.
The respectfulness sometimes confuses me. Thank you. We will go to Assemblymember O'Neill.
That hurt. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate Chair allowing me to chime in on this wonderful bill. I've worked with veterans. We've got another bill coming forward. There's 153 Gold Star family members currently residing in Nevada. A spouse would be a Gold Star member.
If I may, Chair, to follow up on that. That does not necessarily mean that they would meet the limited criteria that is in this bill. Although that is the best number I have heard, because I did check every fiscal note from state and local agencies, and not a single one of them has any idea about that number.
And I appreciate that, because I'm assuming this is, I think all bills this evening are all qualified for an exemption. That sometimes sounds like a wonderful thing, but that really just means that it's exempt from the timelines to allow these bills. If they pass like out of our committee through a work session, they end up going to the wonderful Committee on Ways and Means. So this kind of like information is always helpful, so that there's an idea and a gauge to understand what that negative revenue would be. Oh, hold on, I may have another question. Oh, I guess that, and then this may be complicated, because obviously earlier, and I know you were in another committee, we were listening to Assemblymember Urick's bill, which was Assembly Bill 135, which you may be familiar with, because it was a bill we heard last session, although it didn't make it out of Ways and Means, but this provided surviving spouses of a member, not someone who necessarily was killed in the line of service, but they would receive another benefit, providing guidelines under a property tax exemption as well as a GST exemption. Knowing, and you haven't had a chance to look at AB 135 and those exemptions, with your bill, would a surviving spouse, because they're going to be a surviving spouse for all purposes of both bills, if their spouse was killed in the line of duty, be entitled to all benefits by chance? Would you know that? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, 135.
Brian Evans for the record. I actually did ask LCB to let me know about any interactions between 243 and 135 when I saw that we were being heard on the same day. And as far as I can tell, there is not one does not affect the other, simply because 243 only applies to the surviving spouse of a member fallen in the line of duty.
So it sounds like a surviving spouse wouldn't be precluded from benefiting from both bills, is what I'm kind of the opposite of what you're saying.
Brian Hibbets for the record. I believe that goes back to Assemblymember Considine's question, where they would not be precluded. It actually does say in there, does not affect the eligibility of that person for the benefits or the exemptions under 090 or 091.
I appreciate that. And then Assemblymember Nguyen, do you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. This might be a phone a friend question, maybe not at Assemblymember Hibbets, but I keep seeing this in a lot of bills. I just want to make sure I clarify that on the record for my own knowledge. How do we define bona fide residence again?
Chair's indulgent, I just need 1 second to find the proper section.
Assemblymember, can you kind of just tell everyone where it is and what section you're looking at for this modified residence?
It's really the first 3-4 words of the bill. Number 1, section 1, a bona fide resident of the state of Nevada.
You know what? Let me turn this. I heard something else. I actually heard modified resident, but bona fide resident. I will turn it over to Mr. Nakamoto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. This one, the definition for a bona fide resident is in NRS 361.015. It is a person who, one, has established a residence in the state of Nevada, and two, has A, actually resided in the state for at least 6 months, or B, a valid driver's license or identification card issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles of this state, other than such an identification card which indicates that the person is a seasonal resident.
Thank you, phone a friend, for that. I just want to make sure, why do we not reference it in the bill, that's what bona fide means? Just for clarity, I guess. I'm still wondering on a lot of the seven wonder of LCB. I just don't know if there's a reason why we don't put that in there at the definition of what bona fide resident means.
It sounds to me that the section that was cited, so what sometimes happens is, and they've done a good job back to the 1990s before a law passed to actually have statutory provisions put in here, we would just have like conceptual or proposed changes without seeing the language. But sometimes we don't see the entire statute. But when you're looking at a statute, usually a chapter of where statutes are contained will have a group of definitions. And then if that doesn't work, sometimes you have to go to NRS Chapter 0 that also contains more definitions. Just kind of, I learned that my first year, and I was a lawyer many years and didn't realize that part. This is Chapter 0.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think just for my knowledge and also for the bill as we have coming in just term of think of everyday people as if you want to use this benefit and be able to meet the requirement of being a bona fide resident. I just want to see if we can get more clarity, in the language of the law, so folks know what they qualify for without looking up a whole different section of the law. So that's just my, I guess, everyday breaking down so that people would understand what that means. So thank you, Chair.
Members, do we have any other questions for Assemblymember Hibbets? Okay, with that, Assemblymember Hibbets, we will go ahead and move to testimony in support of Assembly Bill 243. Please come on. Of course. Welcome back up.
Chair Bacchus and committee members, for the record, my name is Andrew Lepelbit. I'm the chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council. I'd like to say ditto, but you might not remember it on the record. We represent nearly 250,000 veterans in our state, and 500,000 when you count their families, a sizable party in this state. This bill is really a critically important bill because these veterans have paid the ultimate price. And Assembly Member O'Neill's correct. The last number I was given about Gold Star families in Nevada was 153, but this group should be aware that there is a Gold Star family coordinator that works at the Veterans Center on Plum Lane in Reno, and he's a retired sergeant, Army sergeant, and he is the Gold Star coordinator. That's where we got the 153. But I might point out that this bill is dedicated to giving that benefit to a surviving spouse. The 153 is family generated in terms of count, and we don't, and I'm sure through, his name is David Souza, I'm sure we could find out what the real spouse count may be. So I hope that helps, and we support this bill as we do anything that improves the lives of our veterans and their families, our National Guard and their families, and our active military and their families in Nevada. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Bacchus, Vice Chair Considine, members of the committee. My name is Wesley Harper. I am the Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas. We are in support of this bill. City of North Las Vegas supports veterans. We have demonstrated our commitment to veterans by the establishment of the only jurisdictional veteran-focused center in Southern Nevada. The Veterans Community and Resource Center provides comprehensive support for veterans and their families. I'm happy to share the details about this center at the committee's request. This bill is a positive bill for veterans, and it shows our appreciation for their service, and therefore we stand in support. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's no one that appears to be in Las Vegas. So AVH will go to the phone lines to take testimony in support of Assembly Bill 243. And just as a reminder for those on the telephone line, please state your name clearly and spell it for us. That'd be great. Thanks so much.
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 243, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 051, please press star 6 to unmute. You may begin.
Barry Johnston, BERRYJOHNSTON. We honor the sacrifice of our fallen heroes by reducing burdens on their surviving spouses through tax exemptions, but is that enough? Unless members intend to act like Robert Morris, a key founding father known as the financier of the Revolution, who sold off his property to pay the French war debt, you must cease taxing us altogether. Why should we merely lessen theft instead of abolishing it altogether? Taxation is theft, plain and simple. The spouses of who paid the ultimate price should be completely free of this financial burden. They deserve total relief, not partial measures. While this bill allows survivors to redirect the exemptions into charitable veterans accounts, we must recognize the deeper truth. The government and the fiscal colonizers, Leviathan's lackeys, impose unjust financial burdens on those who sacrificed everything. We must stop spending recklessly like California and reduce the government size and scope. Inflation robs our citizens daily, diluting their savings. Adjustments to exemptions based on inflation aren't enough. The real solution is sound monetary policy, including the return to the gold standard. Moreover, it's troubling that you aren't addressing the core injustice. Who should surviving spouses face property taxes at all when they've already paid the highest price? Let's take a bold stance, abolish these taxes entirely. Nevada must lead by example, honoring liberty, financial freedom, and the profound sacrifice of our heroes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN, and I'm a 50-year member of the American Legion Auxiliary, 10 times past president. We should find ways to thank all of our vets for all that they do for us all the time. We find so much money for everyone else in the state, just tons of money everywhere else. So, when somebody has made the biggest sacrifice a person can make, we need to be there for them and help their families. I think we should do the right thing. So let's support our vets. They were there for us. Let's be there for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
There are no other callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and take testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 243. We'll go ahead and start in Carson City. Is anyone wanting to give testimony in opposition? There's still no one in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone on the phone line wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 243?
The public line is open and working. There are no other callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and take testimony in the neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give neutral testimony this evening to Assembly Bill 243? Okay. Las Vegas, we don't have anyone. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 243?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and invite Assemblymember Hibbets back to the table for any closing remarks.
Just a quick thank you to the chair and the committee members for allowing me to present today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. With that, I can go ahead and close the hearing for Assembly Bill 243, and I can move on to our very last item on the agenda, which is public comment. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give public comment this evening? There doesn't appear to be anyone in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give public comment this evening?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Barry Johnston, Las Vegas. The whole attitude that you guys have in regards to taxation and how people are just having their homes stolen from them by armed invaders is just disgusting to me. You guys sit there and look at these people and they're like, oh, $9 million. Justin Jones just spent $5 million on bike trails through the desert. So people like him with like bikes that cost more than normal people's cars, the poor people's cars, and you're worried about $9 million, and the NDOT is sitting there whining about the money that they get in, while Watts can't even get the mileage data taken care of so that we can start charging on consumption. All these little things that are just little tiny thieveries from other people to fund all of this stuff is disgusting. And you guys just sit there like, oh, yeah, whatever. We're just going to keep continuing property tax and vehicle taxes. Who cares? You don't care about us at all. You care about these silly little projects so that you can go out and virtue signal and buy votes. That's all this is you're buying votes. They're talking about giving Ozempic to people now. Ozempic through Medicaid. When little kids can't get their nonverbal kids, autistic kids can't get their healthy teeth dental, they have to have them removed. And you guys are sitting here just quibbling about nonsense. I'm disgusted. I'm totally disgusted. We were a no-tax state, and now you guys have destroyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that was our only caller on the phone line this evening. So with that, I can go ahead and conclude our meeting this evening.